Thank you, Patrick. I'm Esther coming to you live from Southern Africa in the beautiful country of Mozambique. Continuing this research on if violence on media in, elicits violence in our real lives. So, there are different hypotheses to see if these champion prize fights are not necessarily proven to show the peaks in homicides um, from viewing the fights on TV. Possibly the personal experience hypothesis indicates that perhaps the prize fight only affects those who are personally experiencing and attending the fights. That then mass media violence cannot be claimed in the trigger of a rise in homicides. So, if this is true, then foreign fights outside the U.S. should have little or no effect on U.S. homicides, and that local U.S. fights should have a much larger effect on U.S. homicides. But unfortunately, the research shows that foreign fights actually have a greater rise in U.S. homicides by 12.128, and the fights in the U.S. have a smaller rise at 2.862. So this hypothesis, unfortunately, is not plausible. There's another hypothesis that comes in two parts. The modeling hypothesis. This hypothesizes that prize fights may trigger homicides through some type of modeling aggression. If a prize fight is more publicized, then it will elicit a greater rise in homicides. But if it's not publicized, it should have a much less effect. So it is true that homicides rise by 11.127 after the average publicized fight, and after unpublicized fights, there is an average rise of 2.83. So there is a plausible explanation, especially since the most touted prize fight of all in this time period is Thrilla in Manila between Ali and Frazier, and it displays the largest peak in third-day homicides. The second part of the modeling hypothesis is if a person is more likely to imitate an aggressor he is similar to. So if the fighting aggressor is a young black male, then murders by young black males should increase, and vice versa for if an aggressor is a young white male, then young white males should be more likely to commit a homicide. And unfortunately, we cannot study this as death certificates do not reveal the identity of the murderer. They only reveal the identity of the victim. So we can research the opposite of this. If a person is more likely to target a victim of the victim on screen. So studying the details of the victims of homicide after these fights, there was found to be a correlation. So if a young black male loses a prize fight, there is an increase of young black male murders. And vice versa, if a young white male loses a fight, there is an increase in young white male deaths. So there isn't a correlation between a young white male loser and a rise of young black male deaths. So there is not a correlation when a young white male loses a fight to an increase of young black male deaths. Only that similar pattern of if a young black male loses a fight, there's not a rise of young white men who die from homicides. There's only an increase of young black men dying. So this model, both of these modeling hypotheses do prove out to have some validity. unfortunately. So watch out if you are a young white male or a young black male and a young white male or a young black male loses. Just watch out. So there's other hypothesis, the precipitation hypothesis, that is possibly if prize fights only precipitates a murder that would have already happened. But an examination of the 3 weeks following a prize fight reveals no significant dips in homicides. So if someone was going to commit a murder, they're probably still going to do that, but also people who weren't precipitating to commit a murder, they were inspired. It shows that there is a high plausibility that the prize fight instigated a homicide, which is awful. Our last hypothesis is the gambling hypothesis, that possibly gambling, which provokes anger, fighting, and murder, if there is an increase in gambling and ergo murder from these prize fights. If gambling is true to elicit an increase in murders, then there would be other events that provokes gamblings and murders. But the U.S. Super Bowl, which provokes more gambling than any other event, does not elicit a rise in homicides. Actually, the U.S. Super Bowl decreases homicides because everybody is watching the game. So this hypothesis is rendered implausible because there would have to be a rise in homicides after other gambling events, and it doesn't seem this way. So out of all of these hypotheses, the best explanation is the modeling hypothesis, that people follow after people that they're similar to. So that is unfortunate. So there is such an increase of homicides after these champion prize fights. This sum total rise is at 125.64, which is a 12% increase, which is huge. 12% increase in murder after a champion prize fight. And on the fourth day, there's an increase by 67.97. That's a 6.58% increase. So these third and fourth days combined, homicides, murders increase by 9.48%. That's huge. Almost 10% murders increase after these championship prize fightings. So one cannot generalize with confidence the impact of mass media violence to violence in the real world in the laboratory. But we can, through this hard evidence, we are able to see that this real world evidence provides an explanation that violence in media elicits violence in the real world. And this is just one example of prize fighting and homicides. How much does it increase abuse on children? Marital abuse. How much does it increase bar fights? How much more is violence? This is just championship fighting. There's other violence that we watch on TV, so we have to be careful about what we're watching. I pray that you will consider how you are affected by the violence that you allow yourself to watch, because other people are affected. Other people have been affected. This is 3-4 decades ago. This research shows the impact of violence on media and how violence on media has increased over these past 30, 40 years is exponential. So we at Simpson News International are happy and blessed to bring you a clean and holy news station that provides great information without violence that could provoke you to murder someone. So continue watching Simpson International News. Tomorrow we will be showing you children being fed in Africa. Hope you have a great day. Thank you.